My name is Emma Richardson, and at 28 years old, I never imagined that saving someone's life at my father's wedding would be the moment everything changed between us. For years, he introduced me to his wealthy friends with barely concealed embarrassment. "This is my daughter Emma. She's just a waitress." That slight grimace, that dismissive tone, made it crystal clear he wished I had chosen a more impressive career. But on that summer evening, when a prominent city councilman started choking at the reception and panic swept through the room, what I did for a living suddenly mattered more than my father ever imagined. The look on his face when the evening news aired footage of me calmly saving a life, when reporters detailed credentials he never knew I had, is something I will never forget. If you're watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns when the underestimated finally get their moment to shine. My father, Robert Mitchell, built his empire on appearances. At 56, he owned one of the most successful commercial real estate development firms in the Northeast, with properties in Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. Our childhood home in Brookline was a showpiece, featured twice in architectural magazines. Family vacations meant five-star resorts in the Caribbean. Every detail of our lives was curated for the impression it would make on clients, investors, and the social circles he cultivated so carefully. I was 18 when my mother, Carol, passed away from ovarian cancer. She had been a high school English teacher who valued substance over status, compassion over competition. The contrast between my parents had always been stark. Where my father measured success in square footage and stock portfolios, my mother measured it in students inspired and books that changed perspectives. Their marriage worked because Mom never tried to change Dad's ambitions, and he never asked her to abandon her values. She was his anchor to authenticity in a world of careful posturing. Her death changed everything between my father and me. Without her gentle mediation, the gulf between our worldviews became impossible to bridge. I was starting my sophomore year at Boston University, majoring in hospitality management. My father had assumed I would transfer to the business school, get my MBA, and join one of his friends' corporate firms. When I told him I wanted to work in restaurants, that I loved the artistry and human connection of hospitality, he looked at me as though I had announced plans to join a commune. "Hospitality management," he had said slowly, sitting in his home office surrounded by awards and framed deals. "Emma, people from our background own restaurants. They don't work in them. I want to understand the industry from the ground up," I had explained, my enthusiasm undimmed by his tone. "The best restaurateurs know every position, every detail. I want to earn my expertise." He had sighed, that particular sigh that communicated volumes of disappointment. "Your mother would have supported this, wouldn't she?" The implication stung. That Mom's values had led me astray, away from the practical path he had envisioned. We barely spoke for the rest of that academic year. After graduation, I took a position as a server at Marcella's, an upscale Italian restaurant in Boston's North End. My father attended my college graduation but left immediately after the ceremony, citing a business meeting. He never asked about my job. When relatives inquired about my career at family gatherings, he would change the subject or offer vague responses about me finding my way. But I wasn't just finding my way. I was building something. Marcella's wasn't some casual dining chain. It was a respected establishment with a wine list that attracted serious collectors and a kitchen that had earned regional acclaim. I started as a server, but within 6 months, I was training new staff. Within a year, I was the head waitress, managing a team of 12 and overseeing the entire front-of-house operation. The work was demanding. I arrived at 3 p.m. for prep and rarely left before midnight. My feet ached. Difficult customers sometimes treated me like I was invisible or, worse, like I existed solely to serve their whims. But I loved it. I loved the precision required to orchestrate a busy dinner service, the satisfaction of turning a table's mediocre evening into a memorable experience, the camaraderie among staff who functioned like a well-trained unit. During my 3rd year at Marcella's, I enrolled in sommelier certification courses. I spent my mornings studying wine regions, tasting notes, and service protocols. The coursework was intensive, requiring the same dedication as any graduate degree. I was working toward my Level 2 certification, a respected credential in the industry. My general manager, Antonio, who had worked at Michelin-starred restaurants in New York, told me I had genuine talent for wine service. My father knew none of this. Our relationship had devolved into obligatory holiday appearances and brief, surface-level phone calls every few weeks. When I tried to share details about my work, his attention would visibly drift. He would interject with comments about former classmates of mine who had made partner at law firms or were climbing corporate ladders. The message was always clear: I had chosen wrong. Then came the wedding invitation. 5 years after my mother's death, my father had found someone new. Victoria Ashford was 38, 18 years younger than him, from a Boston family whose wealth dated back 4 generations. She moved in the same social circles as my father, attended the same charity galas, summered in the same Martha's Vineyard enclaves. They had met at a fundraiser for the symphony and been engaged within 8 months. The invitation arrived at my apartment on a Tuesday. Cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing, the kind that probably cost $15 per card. Robert Mitchell and Victoria Ashford request the honor of your presence. The wedding would take place at the Harborview Resort on Cape Cod, a sprawling luxury property where room rates started at $600 per night. The weekend would include a rehearsal dinner, the ceremony and reception, and a farewell brunch. I held the invitation for a long time, debating whether to RSVP at all. My relationship with my father had become so strained that family events felt like performances where I played the role of the disappointing daughter. I could already imagine the introductions, the barely concealed embarrassment when guests learned what I did for a living. "You have to go," my best friend Maya insisted when I showed her the invitation over coffee at our favorite cafe. Maya and I had been roommates at Boston University and had remained close even as our careers took different paths. She was now a pediatric nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital, working 12-hour shifts that somehow never dampened her optimistic outlook on life. "Why do I have to go?" I asked, stirring my cappuccino absently. "So I can spend an entire weekend being introduced as the daughter who serves pasta for a living?" "Because he's still your father," Maya said gently. "And because maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Maybe Victoria will be a good influence. Maybe he'll see you with fresh eyes." I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, some small part of me still craved my father's approval. I wanted him to understand that my career was legitimate, that I had skills and expertise, that the hospitality industry required intelligence and dedication. I wanted him to be proud of me. "I'll think about it," I said, tucking the invitation into my bag. That evening, after my shift at Marcella's, I called my father. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice distracted. "Emma, I'm glad you called. You received the invitation?" "Yes. Congratulations on the engagement." "Thank you. Victoria is looking forward to meeting you properly. You'll come, won't you? It would mean a great deal to have you there." The words were right, but the tone felt rehearsed, as though he were checking off a box on a wedding planning checklist. "Invite daughter. Check. I'll be there," I heard myself say. "I'm looking forward to it." After we hung up, I sat in my small apartment wondering what I had just committed to. But perhaps Maya was right. Perhaps this wedding would be an opportunity for a fresh start, a chance for my father to finally see me as I really was. I had no idea how right she would be, though not in any way I could have anticipated. The drive to Cape Cod on Friday afternoon gave me too much time to think. I had packed carefully, choosing a navy dress for the rehearsal dinner and a soft rose-colored dress for the wedding itself. Both were elegant but understated. I didn't want to draw attention, didn't want to give my father any reason to find fault. Maya had helped me pick them out, insisting I looked beautiful and professional. "You're going to knock them dead," she had said, squeezing my hand as I left. The Harborview Resort appeared through the trees like something from a lifestyle magazine. Manicured lawns rolled down to a private beach. The main building was all white columns and enormous windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Luxury cars filled the parking area, Mercedes and BMWs and the occasional Tesla. I pulled my 10-year-old Honda Civic into a spot near the back, suddenly feeling out of place. The lobby buzzed with wedding guests checking in. I recognized some faces from my father's world, people I had met at past functions. Women in designer casual wear, their hair highlighted to perfection. Men in expensive polo shirts discussing market trends and golf handicaps. I felt their eyes slide over me as I approached the reception desk, assessing and dismissing in the same glance. "Emma." My father's voice carried across the marble lobby. He approached with Victoria on his arm, both of them looking like they had stepped out of a resort advertisement. My father wore tailored khakis and a crisp white button-down. Victoria floated beside him in a flowing sundress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her blonde hair swept into an effortless updo. "You made it," my father said, offering a brief, awkward hug that barely made contact. "Victoria, this is my daughter Emma." "So lovely to finally meet you properly," Victoria said, her smile practiced and perfect. "Robert has told me so much about you." The lie was polite and obvious. We both knew he had told her very little. "Congratulations on your engagement," I said. "The resort is beautiful. Isn't it divine?" Victoria's gaze had already drifted past me to other arriving guests. "The rehearsal dinner is at 6 in the seaside room. Cocktail attire. You did bring something appropriate, didn't you?" The subtle dig landed exactly as intended. "Yes, of course." "Wonderful. We'll see you then." They moved on quickly, drawn toward a silver-haired couple who were clearly more important than me. I checked into my room, a modest single on the 3rd floor overlooking the parking lot rather than the ocean. The rehearsal dinner was in 2 hours. I showered, changed into my navy dress, and spent far too long staring at myself in the mirror, trying to summon confidence I didn't feel. Incident 1, the rehearsal dinner. The seaside room lived up to its name, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. Round tables draped in white linen filled the space, each decorated with elaborate centerpieces of hydrangeas and roses. Place cards in elegant calligraphy directed guests to their assigned seats. Mine was at a table near the back, far from the head table where my father and Victoria would sit with immediate family and the wedding party. I found my seat next to an older couple I didn't recognize and a middle-aged man who introduced himself as Victoria's uncle. The conversation was polite but stilted. They asked where I lived, and I told them Boston. They asked what I did, and I said I worked in hospitality. "Oh, event planning?" the woman asked, perking up slightly. "That must be exciting." "Not exactly. I'm actually in restaurant management." The interest in her eyes dimmed. "I see. That's nice." I was saved from further awkward conversation by the arrival of champagne and the beginning of toasts. Victoria's father spoke about his daughter's accomplishments, her charity work, her impeccable taste. My father spoke about finding love again, about Victoria bringing light back into his life. He never mentioned me or my mother. It was as though the first chapter of his life had been erased, replaced by this shinier, more acceptable version. Midway through the salad course, my father began making rounds to the tables, Victoria beside him, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. When they reached my table, my stomach tightened. "This is my daughter Emma," my father said to Victoria's uncle, his tone pleasant but distant. "She's just a waitress in Boston. Not a restaurant professional. Not someone working in hospitality management. Just a waitress." The words hung in the air, dismissive and small. Victoria's uncle nodded politely. "Well, everyone has to start somewhere." "Indeed," my father agreed, already turning his attention to the next table. "One has to start somewhere." "Indeed," my father agreed, already turning his attention to the next table. I felt my face flush hot. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. The woman across from me gave me a sympathetic look that somehow made it worse. Pity was almost harder to bear than dismissal. After they moved on, I excused myself to the restroom. In the marble-tiled sanctuary, I gripped the edge of the sink and took slow, deep breaths. This was exactly what I had expected. Why did it still hurt so much? My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How's it going? Remember you're amazing regardless of what anyone thinks." I typed back. He introduced me as just a waitress to the first group of people we encountered. Her response came immediately, "What an ass. Want me to drive up there and cause a scene?" Despite everything, I smiled. "No. I'll survive. Just one more day." Incident 2, the morning brunch. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a wedding. A casual brunch had been arranged on the resort's terrace for out-of-town guests. I debated skipping it, but decided that hiding would only make me feel worse. I chose white jeans and a simple blue blouse, tied my hair back, and headed down. The terrace overlooked the ocean, with tables set up buffet-style offering fresh fruit, pastries, smoked salmon, and made-to-order omelets. Guests mingled with coffee and mimosas, the atmosphere relaxed and jovial. I filled a plate and found a small table near the edge of the terrace, hoping to eat quietly and escape back to my room. Victoria's mother, Patricia Ashford, spotted me before I could take my first bite. She approached with 2 younger women in tow, all 3 dressed in that particular style of expensive casual that probably required a personal shopper. Emma, dear, Patricia said, settling into the chair across from me uninvited. I wanted to introduce you to my nieces, Caroline and Julia. Caroline just made junior partner at Hutchins and Warner. And Julia is finishing her MBA at Wharton. The subtext was clear. These were the kinds of daughters successful people had. Daughters with impressive credentials and career trajectories. Nice to meet you both, I said, setting down my fork. You're in Boston, right? Caroline asked. She had her aunt's sharp eyes and assessing gaze. What do you do there? I work at a restaurant in the North End. Marcella's. As in, you work there? Or you manage it? Julia asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. I'm the head waitress. I manage the front of house staff. So you're still working on your career plan, Patricia interjected smoothly. That's very common for people your age. Robert mentioned you might be considering business school? I hadn't considered business school in 10 years, but my father was apparently still telling people I was in some transitional phase, still figuring things out. Actually, I'm pursuing my sommelier certification. I'm nearly finished with level 2. The three women exchanged glances. A sommelier, Caroline repeated. That's interesting. Is there much of a market for that? In fine dining, absolutely. Wine service is a specialized skill. I'm sure it is, Patricia said in that tone people use when they're being polite but don't actually believe what they're saying. It's wonderful that you found something you enjoy. Not everyone needs a conventional career path. The implication that my path was somehow less valid, less serious, made my jaw tighten. But I forced a smile. Exactly. Victoria herself appeared then, gliding over in a white linen dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. There you are, Emma. I've been meaning to ask, do you have a +1 for the wedding? I noticed your RSVP was just for one. No, I'm coming alone. That's too bad. I seated you with some lovely people, though. Victoria's second cousin and his wife. They're very friendly. She smiled brightly. They own a chain of dry cleaners, so you'll have that service industry connection. The comparison between restaurant hospitality and dry cleaning was so absurd I almost laughed. But Victoria seemed genuinely oblivious to the condescension dripping from her words. After they finally moved on to other guests, I abandoned my half-eaten brunch and returned to my room. I had 4 hours until the ceremony. 4 hours to shore up my defenses for whatever else this day would bring. Incident 3, Pre-ceremony conversation. At 3 o'clock, I decided to take a walk along the beach to clear my head before getting ready. The resort's private beach was dotted with guests enjoying the sunshine, but I found a quieter stretch and walked along the water's edge, letting the rhythm of the waves calm my nerves. I was heading back toward the resort when I encountered my father walking in the opposite direction. He was alone, dressed in casual clothes, likely taking a moment of solitude before the ceremony. We both paused, surprised by the unexpected meeting. Emma, he said. Enjoying the resort? It's beautiful. Are you nervous? A little, he admitted, offering a smile that seemed genuine. It's been a long time since my first wedding. The mention of my mother felt like an opening. Mom would have been happy for you. She always wanted you to be happy. His expression softened. She would have. Your mother was remarkably free of jealousy or pettiness. He paused, then added, how are things with you? Still at that restaurant? Still at that restaurant. As though 3 years of progression and growth could be dismissed so casually. But I tried to see it as an opportunity. Actually, I've been promoted several times. I'm head of the entire front of house operation now. And I'm almost finished with my level 2 sommelier certification. Sommelier, my father repeated, his brow furrowing slightly. That's, what, like a fancy bartender? The dismissal stung, but I persisted. It's wine service and expertise. The certification requires extensive knowledge of wine regions, production methods, food pairings, and service protocols. It's a respected credential in the hospitality industry. I see. His tone suggested he didn't see at all. And this is leading somewhere? I mean, do you have a plan beyond serving wine? My chest tightened. My plan is to continue building expertise in fine dining hospitality. Maybe eventually open my own restaurant or become a beverage director at a high-end establishment. He nodded slowly, the way someone nods when they're humoring a child's unrealistic dreams. Well, it's good to have goals. Though I still think you'd be excellent in business. It's not too late for an MBA. I still have connections at several good programs. I don't want an MBA, Dad. I want to do what I'm doing. All right, he said, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. I'm just saying you have options. You could still pivot to something more substantial. Substantial. There it was. The core belief underlying all his dismissals. My work, my passion, my expertise, none of it was substantial in his eyes. I should get back, I said, my voice tight. Victoria's probably looking for you. Right. See you at the ceremony. I walked away before tears could form. 3 years of hard work, professional development, and growing expertise, and he still saw me as someone who needed to find a real career. Someone who needed to be fixed. Incident 4, the ceremony setup. By 4 o'clock, guests were beginning to gather in the resort's gardens where the ceremony would take place. Wide chairs arranged in rows faced an elaborate floral arch. I slipped into a seat in the back row, hoping to remain invisible. The guests around me were clearly my father's business associates and Victoria's social circle. Their conversations flowed around me, stock portfolios, vacation homes, children at Ivy League schools, upcoming benefits at the Museum of Fine Arts. I had nothing to contribute, so I sat quietly, checking my phone and wishing the next few hours would pass quickly. You're Robert's daughter, aren't you? The woman in the seat next to me wore a yellow dress and genuinely kind smile. I'm Helen Price. My husband does business with your father. Nice to meet you, I said, grateful for friendly conversation. What do you do, dear? There it was again. The inevitable question. I work at a restaurant in Boston. Oh, how lovely. Which one? Marcella's, in the North End. I know Marcella's. The Italian place with the incredible wine list. We celebrated our anniversary there last year. The service was impeccable. Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. Do you work in the kitchen? No, I manage the front of house. I'm actually studying to be a sommelier. How fascinating. That takes real expertise, doesn't it? Wine service is an art. For the first time all weekend, someone had responded to my career with genuine interest and respect. I felt my shoulders relax slightly. It does. There's a lot more to it than most people realize. I can imagine. You know, my nephew is in hospitality. He's the general manager at a hotel in New York. He loves it, says it's the most dynamic industry he's ever worked in. We chatted easily until the music began and the ceremony started. As my father walked down the aisle with Victoria, I caught his eye briefly. He gave me a small nod, and I nodded back. Despite everything, I was glad I had come. Maybe Helen was right. Maybe hospitality was a dynamic, valid, respectable field. Maybe my father was just one person who couldn't see it. Incident 5, the breaking point. The ceremony was beautiful and brief. My father and Victoria exchanged vows under the floral arch as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. When they kissed, guests applauded. I clapped along with everyone else, feeling oddly detached from the moment. The cocktail hour took place on the same terrace where we'd had brunch that morning, now transformed with additional bars and past appetizers. I accepted a glass of white wine and tried to blend into the background, nodding politely at guests but not engaging in conversation. Then I overheard it. My father stood 20 feet away, surrounded by a group of his business partners. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but his voice carried clearly across the terrace. Emma's here somewhere, he was saying. She's still trying to figure things out. 28 years old and working as a waitress in Boston. One of the men chuckled. At 28, I was 3 years into my first firm. Exactly, my father agreed. I keep telling her she should consider business school, get serious about her career. But she's insisting this restaurant thing is her path. Maybe she'll meet someone who helps her settle down and focus, another man offered. Marriage has a way of bringing clarity. My father laughed. One can hope. I'm trying not to push too hard, but it's difficult watching your child drift without direction. Drift without direction. The words struck like a physical blow. I stood frozen, wine glass trembling in my hand. Around me, conversations continued, laughter floated across the terrace, servers circulated with all I could hear was my father's voice dismissing 3 years of my life as drifting. The elderly woman next to me, Helen from the ceremony, must have noticed my expression. Are you all right, dear? I need to excuse myself for a moment, I managed, setting down my glass on a nearby table. I walked quickly toward the resort building, past the restrooms, past the lobby, until I found myself in a quiet alcove near the conference rooms. My hands were shaking. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to call Maya. She answered on the second ring. How's the wedding? She asked. He just told his business partners I'm drifting without direction. That I'm 28 and still trying to figure things out. My voice cracked slightly. Oh, Emma. I have a career, Maya. I have skills and expertise and professional goals. Why can't he see that? Why am I not enough? You are enough, Maya said firmly. His inability to recognize your value is his failure, not yours. You know that, right? I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Intellectually, yes. But it doesn't feel that way right now. Do you want me to come get you? I can be there in under 2 hours. No. I'm going to stay. I'm going to go back to that reception with my head high, and I'm going to get through this evening. And then I'm leaving first thing tomorrow, and I'm done seeking his approval. I'm done hoping he'll finally see me. Good, Maya said. Because his opinion doesn't define you. Your work defines you. Your expertise defines you. You define you. After we hung up, I stood in that quiet alcove for several minutes, letting Maya's words settle into my bones. Something inside me hardened, crystallized into clarity. I didn't need my father's validation to know my worth. I had spent years trying to prove myself to someone who had already decided I wasn't good enough. That ended today. I returned to the cocktail hour with new resolve. I would be polite, cordial, and completely emotionally detached. My father could think whatever he wanted. His disappointment would no longer touch me. I had no idea that within hours, circumstances would force him to see me differently. But even if I had known, it wouldn't have changed the decision I made in that moment. I was done living for his approval. The reception began at 7 o'clock in the resort's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables draped in ivory silk. Centerpieces of white roses and candles created an atmosphere of understated elegance. A band played soft jazz as guests found their assigned seats. I located my table near the back of the room. My table mates included Victoria's second cousin and his wife, an older couple from my father's firm, and 2 younger people I didn't recognize. The introductions were polite but perfunctory. No one asked what I did. I was grateful for the anonymity. As dinner was served, I watched my father and Victoria at the head table. They looked happy, radiant even. Victoria laughed at something one of her bridesmaids said. My father raised his glass in a toast to guests at a nearby table. They belonged in this world of polished surfaces and careful presentations. I had never belonged here, and I finally accepted that I never would. The salad course came and went. I made small talk with the woman next to me about the weather, the beauty of the resort, the quality of the ceremony. Safe topics that required nothing of me. I sipped water and waited for the evening to end so I could return to my room and begin planning my early departure. Then I heard the commotion. 3 tables away, near the dance floor, someone was standing abruptly. A man's voice, panicked, "He's choking. Someone help, he's choking." The music faltered. Conversation stopped. Heads turned toward the source of the panic. I was on my feet before conscious thought took over. Years of training kicked in automatically. At Marcella's, every staff member was required to maintain current CPR and first aid certification. I had been through the training 4 times, had even handled 2 actual choking incidents at the restaurant. My body knew what to do before my mind caught up. I moved quickly through the tables. The man who was choking sat slumped forward, his face turning red, his hands clutching at his throat. His wife stood beside him, frozen in terror. Other guests had backed away, forming a helpless circle around the emergency. "I'm trained in first aid," I said clearly, reaching the man. "Sir, can you breathe? Can you cough?" He shook his head frantically. No air was getting through. Complete obstruction. "I'm going to help you," I said, moving behind him. I positioned my hands correctly, one fist just above his navel, the other hand grasping my fist. This might be uncomfortable. I performed the Heimlich maneuver with controlled force. Once. Twice. On the 3rd thrust, a piece of steak dislodged from his throat and flew onto the table. The man gasped, drawing in a ragged breath. The entire ballroom had gone silent. 300 people watched as the man coughed, his color slowly returning to normal. His wife burst into tears, clutching his arm. "Take slow, deep breaths," I instructed, keeping my hand on his shoulder. "You're okay now. Just breathe." "Thank you," he gasped. "Thank you so much." Someone in the crowd began to clap. Others joined until the entire room was applauding. I felt my face flush. This wasn't about recognition. This was just what anyone with training would have done. "Is there a doctor here?" I called out. He should probably be examined to make sure everything's okay. A woman pushed through the crowd. I'm a physician. Let me check him. I stepped back, giving her space. My hands trembled now that the adrenaline was fading. The man's wife grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. You saved his life, she sobbed. Oh my God, you saved my husband's life. I'm just glad I was here, I said quietly. The man himself, now breathing normally with the doctor checking his vitals, looked up at me with profound gratitude. What's your name? Emma Richardson. I'm Richard Torres, he said, extending his hand. I owe you everything. What do you do, Emma? Are you a doctor? A nurse? No, I work in a restaurant. We're all trained in emergency response. It's part of the job. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Wait. Richard Torres, as in Councilman Torres? That's right. I had saved the life of one of Boston's most prominent city councilmen. The realization settled over me slowly, along with the awareness that every person in this ballroom had just watched me do it. Including my father. The doctor, a guest named Dr. Patricia Chen, declared Councilman Torres stable but recommended he rest for the remainder of the evening. His wife insisted they stay long enough to properly thank me, but I deflected, uncomfortable with the attention. The ballroom slowly returned to normal, though I noticed clusters of guests glancing my way and whispering. I returned to my table, hoping to fade back into obscurity. But Victoria's second cousin leaned toward me immediately. That was incredible. Where did you learn to do that? Restaurant training, I said simply. We're all certified in CPR and emergency response. All restaurant workers? His wife looked genuinely surprised. At reputable establishments, yes. It's standard practice, especially in fine dining where you're serving high-profile clients. Medical emergencies can happen anywhere, and we need to be prepared. The older man from my father's firm spoke up. I had no idea that was part of restaurant training. That's quite comprehensive. It is. We also train in allergen awareness, recognizing signs of intoxication, handling various medical situations. Guest safety is paramount. I was explaining my work in a way I never had before, not defensive or apologetic, just matter of fact. These were the realities of professional hospitality that people like my father never bothered to learn. Before the conversation could continue, a resort staff member approached our table. Miss Richardson? Councilman Torres would like to speak with you briefly, if you're willing. I followed her to a quiet sitting area off the main ballroom where Councilman Torres sat with his wife, both looking considerably calmer than 20 minutes earlier. He stood as I approached, extending his hand. I wanted to thank you properly, he said. Without you, I don't know what would have happened. My wife tells me I was completely obstructed. I couldn't breathe at all. I'm just grateful I was there and had the training, I replied. This training, it's part of your job? His wife asked. You work in a restaurant? Yes, at Marcella's in Boston's North End. I'm the head of front-of-house operations there. Every member of our staff maintains current certifications in emergency response. Torres' expression shifted to one of interest. Marcella's. I know that restaurant. Outstanding wine program, if I remember correctly. We have over 400 selections. I'm actually pursuing my sommelier certification. I'm nearly finished with level 2. A sommelier, Torres repeated, impressed. That requires significant expertise. Wine service is a specialized field. It was startling to hear someone speak about my work with genuine respect, to acknowledge the skill and knowledge it required. What Torres didn't know was that in the restaurant industry, these credentials carried real weight. Level 2 sommelier certification required passing rigorous exams on wine theory, blind tasting, and service techniques. Only about 60% of candidates passed on their first attempt. It does, I confirmed. The hospitality industry demands constant learning and professional development. Torres nodded thoughtfully. You know, I chair the City Council's Small Business and Tourism Committee. We've been developing a program to highlight Boston's culinary excellence, showcase the professionals who make our restaurants seem world-class. Would you be interested in being part of that conversation? Before I could respond, a commotion near the ballroom entrance caught our attention. Someone was setting up camera equipment. A woman in a blazer spoke with resort management, gesturing animatedly. That's Melissa Chung from Channel 7 News, Torres said, a slight grimace crossing his face. My chief of staff must have called them. They always want a statement when anything happens involving me. The news crew. My stomach tightened. I hadn't considered that this incident might attract media attention. I should explain this situation to them, Torres continued. They'll want to know what happened. Would you be willing to speak with them? I think it's important people understand how your quick thinking and professional training made the difference. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to be on the news. But Torres looked at me with such earnest grin. Brief statement only, I said. I don't want to make a big deal of this. Of course. What I didn't know then was that Councilman Torres was more than just a city councilman. He was a rising political figure, frequently mentioned as a potential mayoral candidate. Anything involving him was newsworthy in Boston. And a dramatic life-saving incident at a high society wedding? That was a story too good for the media to pass up. Melissa Chong approached us with her cameraman in tow. She was polished and professional, introducing herself quickly before getting to business. Councilman Torres, we understand there was a medical emergency this evening. Can you tell us what happened? Torres recounted the choking incident with surprising detail, then turned to me. This is Emma Richardson. She's the person who saved my life. Without her immediate action and professional training, the outcome would have been very different. The camera swiveled to me. A small light illuminated my face. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but I kept my expression calm. Miss Richardson, can you walk us through what happened? Melissa asked. I explained the incident concisely, focusing on the facts. The complete obstruction, the Heimlich maneuver, the successful dislodging of the blockage. I kept my tone professional and unemotional. You mentioned professional training, Melissa pressed. What's your background? I work at Marcella's restaurant in Boston's North End. I'm the head of front of house operations. All our staff maintain current certifications in CPR, first aid, and emergency response. It's standard practice in professional hospitality. So you're not a medical professional? No. I'm a hospitality professional. But guest safety is a core component of what we do. We're trained to handle medical emergencies, allergic reactions, various crisis situations. Tonight that training made the difference. Melissa turned back to Torres. Councilman, knowing that a restaurant professional had the skills to save your life, what does that tell you about the hospitality industry? Torres smiled. It tells me we should have tremendous respect for the people who work in service industries. Emma represents the kind of professionalism and expertise that makes Boston's restaurant scene world-class. She's also pursuing her Sommelier certification, which requires exceptional knowledge and skill. I'm deeply grateful she was here tonight. The interview continued for a few more minutes. Torres mentioned the city's culinary excellence program, positioning the incident as a reminder of the vital role hospitality professionals play in the community. Melissa asked me a few more questions about my training and my work at Marcella's. I answered honestly, describing the rigorous safety protocols we maintained and the extensive knowledge base required for fine dining service. When the camera finally turned off, Melissa handed me her card. This is a great human interest story. Mind if I reach out for a follow-up piece about restaurant safety training? I prefer to keep a low profile, I said. But you're welcome to contact Marcella's. My general manager might be interested in discussing our safety protocols. As the news crew packed up, I became aware of the ballroom doors opening. Guests had been watching from inside, and now they spilled out into the sitting area. Among them was my father, his face unreadable. He approached slowly, Victoria beside him. Other guests gave them space, recognizing this as a family moment. Emma, my father said. I had no idea you had that kind of training. Restaurant safety certification, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. We renew it annually. The councilman said you're pursuing your sommelier certification as well. Level 2? Yes. I'm taking the exam next month. My father looked genuinely stunned, as though he were seeing me for the first time. I didn't know. You never mentioned. I did mention it, Dad. This morning on the beach. You called it fancy bartending. He flinched. Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. Around us, guests pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. I see that now, he said quietly. I see a lot of things now. Before the conversation could continue, Councilman Torres rejoined us. Robert, you have an extraordinary daughter. I hope you know that. I'm beginning to, my father said, his voice strained. The evening continued around us. The band resumed playing. Guests returned to their tables for dessert. But something fundamental had shifted. People who had ignored me all weekend now approached to offer congratulations and thanks. They asked questions about my work with genuine interest. They wanted to know about Marcella's, about wine service, about the hospitality industry. Victoria's mother, Patricia, who had so condescendingly asked about my career plan that morning, sought me out during dessert. "Emma, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions about your work that were clearly wrong. What you did tonight was remarkable." "Thank you," I said simply. "But I was just doing what I'm trained to do." "That's exactly my point. The level of training and professionalism you demonstrated. I had no idea that was part of restaurant work." "Most people don't," I acknowledged. "The hospitality industry is often undervalued and misunderstood." What Patricia and the others didn't know was that my knowledge extended far beyond emergency response. Over the past 3 years, I had become an expert in wine regions across the globe, from Burgundy to Barolo to the Willamette Valley. I could identify wines blind by taste, discuss the impact of terroir on flavor profiles, and recommend perfect pairings for complex dishes. I managed a team of 12 staff members, handled difficult customers with diplomacy, and coordinated with the kitchen to ensure seamless service during busy nights when we served over 200 guests. I had developed relationships with wine distributors, attended industry conferences, and networked with other professionals in fine dining. My general manager, Antonio, had recently told me about an opening for assistant beverage director at Olina, a Michelin-starred restaurant in Cambridge. The salary would be nearly double what I currently made, with benefits and opportunities for continued advancement. None of this had mattered to my father yesterday. But tonight, because I had performed an emergency procedure on camera in front of 300 witnesses, suddenly my career had value. The irony wasn't lost on me. As the reception wound down, guests began departing. Many stopped to thank me again or to share their own stories of medical emergencies. The photographer asked to take a photo of me with Councilman Torres and his wife. I reluctantly agreed, standing between them as the flash went off. My father watched from across the room, speaking with some of his business partners but repeatedly glancing my way. I could see him processing, recalibrating, trying to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the person he had witnessed tonight. But here was what my father didn't understand. I was the same person I had been yesterday. The same person I had been 3 years ago when I started at Marcella's. The same person I had been when I chose hospitality management over business school. Nothing about me had changed. Only his perception had changed, and only because external validation had forced him to see what had been there all along. Around 11 o'clock, I slipped away from the ballroom and returned to my room. My phone had been buzzing throughout the evening with texts from Maya, from colleagues at Marcella's who had somehow already heard about the incident, from my general manager Antonio. Antonio's message read, "Just heard what happened at your dad's wedding. Are you okay?" Also, Channel 7 News called the restaurant asking for comment. I told them we're incredibly proud of you and that your actions reflect the professionalism we expect from our team. Call me tomorrow. Maya's messages were characteristically supportive. "You're a literal hero. I'm so proud of you. How does it feel to show your dad what you're really made of?" I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my rose-colored dress, and tried to process the evening. I had come to this wedding expecting dismissal and disappointment. Instead, I had saved a man's life and been interviewed on camera about the professional expertise my father had always dismissed as irrelevant. But the satisfaction I felt wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving to myself that I had chosen correctly, that my work had value independent of anyone else's opinion. The validation from Councilman Torres, from the other guests, even from the news media, was nice. But it was secondary to the deeper knowledge that I had skills and training that mattered, that made a tangible difference. I changed into comfortable clothes and washed my face. Tomorrow I would leave early, as planned. Tonight had changed things between my father and me, but I wasn't sure yet what that change would mean. For now, I was simply exhausted and ready to sleep. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from my father, "Can we talk tomorrow morning before you leave? Please." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my response, "Breakfast. 8 a.m. Ocean View Cafe." His reply came immediately, "I'll be there. Thank you." I set my phone on the nightstand and turned off the light. Through the window, I could hear the distant sound of waves breaking on the shore. Tomorrow would bring another difficult conversation with my father. But tonight, I would rest knowing that I was exactly who I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. And that knowledge, I realized, was the only validation I had ever truly needed. I didn't sleep well. My mind replayed the evening on an endless loop. The panic in the ballroom. The feel of performing the Heimlich maneuver. The camera lights. My father's stunned expression. By 6 o'clock, I gave up on sleep entirely and went for a walk on the beach. The morning was cool and quiet, the resort just beginning to wake. I walked along the water's edge, letting the repetitive sound of waves calm my racing thoughts. In a few hours, I would sit across from my father and have a conversation we should have had years ago. I wasn't sure what I wanted from it anymore. An apology seemed insufficient. Understanding felt like too much to ask for. At 7:30, I returned to my room to shower and change. I chose jeans and a simple white blouse, comfortable clothes for the drive back to Boston. I packed my bag methodically, leaving out only what I would need for breakfast and the trip home. By the time I walked to the Ocean View Cafe at 5 minutes to 8, I felt armored and ready. My father was already there, seated at a corner table overlooking the water. He stood as I approached, looking more uncertain than I had ever seen him. His usual confidence had been replaced by something tentative, almost fragile. Emma. Thank you for coming. He pulled out my chair, a gesture that felt awkward between us. Of course. I sat, accepting the coffee a server immediately poured. We ordered breakfast in silence. My father chose eggs Benedict. I ordered oatmeal with fruit. The server retreated, leaving us alone with the ocean view and years of unspoken tension. I watched the news this morning, my father began. The local station ran your interview with Councilman Torres. It was their lead story. I hadn't seen it yet. The thought of my face on the morning news made my stomach tighten. I didn't ask for media attention. I know. But it was impressive. The way you explained your training, your work. The councilman was effusive in his praise. My father paused, gripping his coffee cup. He said you represent the best of Boston's hospitality industry. That was kind of him to say. Emma, I owe you an apology. Not just for this weekend, but for years of dismissing your career choices. The words hung between us. I had imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was here, I felt oddly detached. Okay. He looked taken aback by my lack of reaction. What do you want me to say, Dad? That I accept your apology and everything is fine now? That last night erased years of you being embarrassed by me? He flinched. I was never embarrassed by you. Yes, you were. You are. I kept my voice level, stating facts without anger. You've introduced me as just a waitress to every person at this wedding. You told your business partners yesterday that I'm drifting without direction. You've spent 3 years waiting for me to give up and choose a career you consider legitimate. I didn't understand what you actually do. Because you never asked. I tried to tell you, Dad. Multiple times. Yesterday on the beach, I explained my sommelier certification. You called it fancy bartending. I've told you about my promotions, my responsibilities, my professional development. You changed the subject every time. Our food arrived. The server placed plates in front of us with practiced efficiency, sensing the tension and retreating quickly. My father stared at his eggs Benedict without touching them. You're right. I didn't listen. I had this picture in my head of what success looked like, and anything that didn't fit that picture didn't matter. I finished. I know. I've lived it. That's not fair. I want you to be happy. No, you want me to be successful by your definition. There's a difference. I took a bite of oatmeal, forcing myself to eat despite my lack of appetite. The thing is, Dad, I am successful. I have a career I'm passionate about. I have expertise that saved a man's life last night. I have professional opportunities opening up. I'm happy with my choices. The only person who isn't happy with them is you. I see that now. Last night, watching you handle that emergency, hearing you talk about your training, your certifications, the respect the councilman had for your knowledge. I realized I've been completely blind to who you actually are. And that's supposed to fix 3 years of being made to feel small? The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take them back. My father set down his fork. No. It doesn't fix anything. But I'm hoping it's a starting point. I looked at him carefully. His eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting he hadn't slept much either. His usual polished appearance was slightly rumpled. He looked older than I remembered, vulnerable in a way I had never seen. Why now? I asked. Why is it different now? Because I was on the news? Because I saved someone important? Because 300 people witnessed me being competent? Because I finally saw what I should have been seeing all along. But that's my point, Dad. Nothing about me changed last night. I've had that training for 3 years. I've been managing a team and building expertise and growing professionally this entire time. The only thing that changed was your perception, and only because external validation forced you to pay attention. He absorbed this, nodding slowly. You're absolutely right. And that's my failure, not yours. The admission startled me. My father rarely admitted fault, especially so directly. The news segment this morning, he continued, they interviewed your general manager. Antonio something? Antonio Moretti. He talked about what an asset you are to Marcellus. How you've transformed their front-of-house operations, how their customer satisfaction scores have improved significantly under your leadership. He said you're being recruited by other restaurants because you're that good at what you do. I hadn't known Antonio had been interviewed. The thought of him defending me to the media made emotion rise in my throat. Antonio's been a great mentor. He also mentioned you're considering an offer from a Michelin-starred restaurant. Assistant beverage director position. Olena. In Cambridge. I haven't decided yet. Why didn't you tell me? When would I have told you, Dad? During one of our monthly phone calls where you ask how I am and then talk about your work for 40 minutes? At Christmas when you spent the entire dinner discussing the stock market with Uncle Robert? You've made it very clear you're not interested in my career. I want to be interested now. If you'll let me. I studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or manipulation. But he seemed genuine, almost desperate. It's not that simple, I said. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly care because I did something that impressed you. That's not how relationships work. Then tell me how it works. Tell me what I need to do. Before I could answer, a commotion near the cafe entrance caught our attention. Melissa Chong from Channel 7 News was entering with her cameraman, followed by several other guests from the wedding. Among them was Councilman Torres and his wife. Melissa spotted us and headed directly to our table. Emma, I'm so glad I caught you. We're doing a follow-up segment for the noon broadcast. The story went viral overnight. Over 2 million views on social media. Would you be willing to answer a few more questions? I really don't think, I began. Please, Torres interjected. Your story is resonating with people. Restaurant workers across the city are reaching out, talking about how they're finally getting recognition for the professionalism their work requires. You've started an important conversation. I glanced at my father, who was watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. 5 minutes, I agreed reluctantly. But then I need to leave. The cameraman set up quickly. Melissa positioned herself next to our table, microphone ready. Other cafe patrons had noticed and were watching with interest. We're here with Emma Richardson, Melissa began, the hospitality professional whose quick thinking saved Councilman Richard Torres's life last night at a wedding reception. Emma, overnight your story has sparked a national conversation about the expertise required in service industries. How does it feel to be at the center of that dialogue? Honestly, it's overwhelming, I said. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I used training that every professional in my field should have. I think the conversation says more about how we undervalue service work than about me specifically. Your father is here with you. Robert Mitchell, prominent real estate developer. What was it like watching your daughter save someone's life? The camera swung to my father. He looked directly into the lens, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. It was humbling. I've spent years not fully appreciating what my daughter does, not understanding the expertise her work requires. Watching her last night, seeing her competence and professionalism, made me realize how wrong I've been. Emma is extraordinary at what she does, and I'm ashamed it took a crisis for me to recognize that. I stared at him. He had just admitted his failure on camera, to be broadcast across Boston and potentially beyond. Melissa turned back to me. Emma, what would you say to young people considering careers in hospitality? I would say follow your passion, but understand that passion requires dedication and continuous learning. The hospitality industry demands as much expertise as any other field. We study constantly, train regularly, and develop specialized skills. It's work that matters. It's work that makes people's lives better. And it deserves respect. Beautiful, Melissa said. One final question. Your general manager mentioned you're considering a position at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Can you tell us about that? I hesitated, aware of my father listening intently. I've been offered the assistant beverage director role at Olena in Cambridge. It's an incredible opportunity to work with one of the most respected wine programs in New England. I'm seriously considering it. That sounds like a significant career advancement. It is. But more importantly, it's a chance to continue growing in a field I love, working with people who share my passion for excellence in hospitality. The interview concluded. Melissa thanked us both, and the news crew packed up. Torres approached our table once more. Emma, I meant what I said about the city's culinary excellence program. I'd like you to be involved. We need voices like yours, professionals who can articulate why this industry matters. He handed me his card. Please call my office next week. After they all left, my father and I sat in silence. Our breakfast had gone cold. The cafe had emptied considerably, though a few remaining guests still glanced our way. You just admitted on television that you were wrong about my career, I said finally. I was wrong. Everyone should know it. Why? Why say it publicly? Because private apologies are easy. Public accountability is harder. You've spent years being publicly dismissed by me. The least I can do is publicly acknowledge my mistake. I felt something crack inside me, some wall I'd been holding in place. Do you actually understand what I do now? Or are you just impressed because other people are impressed? Both, probably, he admitted. But I want to understand. Really understand. Will you tell me about this Alina position? What would you be doing? So I told him. I explained how assistant beverage director meant overseeing a wine program valued at over $500,000. How I would work with the head sommelier to curate selections, train staff, develop pairings for seasonal menus. How the position required extensive knowledge of wine regions, production methods, market trends. How it was a stepping stone toward eventually becoming a head sommelier or beverage director at a major establishment. My father listened without interrupting, asking occasional questions that suggested he was genuinely trying to understand. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. I had no idea the scope of what you do. The responsibility, the expertise required. Emma, you've built something real. Something valuable. And I've spent 3 years trying to convince you to abandon it. Yes, you have. Can you forgive me? I considered the question carefully. I don't know yet. I appreciate the apology. I appreciate you saying it publicly. But forgiveness takes time, Dad. You hurt me. Repeatedly. 4 years. That doesn't go away overnight. I understand. What can I do? Start by actually caring about my life. Not because it impresses other people, but because I'm your daughter. Ask me about my work. Listen to the answers. Show up for things that matter to me, the way I showed up for your wedding even knowing how you'd introduce me. I can do that. I will do that. And stop trying to fix me or change my path. This is my life, my choice. You don't have to understand it completely, but you do have to respect it. I do respect it. I finally see how much I should have respected it all along. I pushed back from the table. I need to go. I have a long drive back to Boston. Will you call me? Next week sometime? Maybe. Let me think about it. He stood, reaching out as if to hug me, then dropping his arms when I didn't move toward him. Thank you for giving me this conversation. For being honest about how I've hurt you. I know I don't deserve your patience. You're right. You don't. I picked up my bag. But maybe we can work towards something better. Eventually. I left him standing in the cafe, looking lost and uncertain. As I walked back to my room to collect my things, I felt exhausted but oddly cleansed. I had finally said what needed to be said. The rest was up to him. Whether our relationship could be repaired remained to be seen. But at least now it was based on truth rather than my desperate attempts to earn approval that should have been freely given all along. The drive back to Boston should have felt liberating. I had finally confronted my father, said everything that needed to be said, and left on my own terms. But instead, I felt hollowed out, emotionally depleted from the weekend's intensity. Halfway home, I pulled into a rest stop and called Maya. You're famous, she said immediately upon answering. I've seen the interview like 5 times already. It's everywhere. I just wanted to save someone and go home quietly. Well, that's not what happened. You're a viral sensation. Restaurant worker saves councilman is trending on Twitter. People are sharing stories about their own experiences in service industries. You started something, Emma. I leaned against my car, suddenly overwhelmed. I don't want to be a symbol or a spokesperson. I just want to do my job. I know. But sometimes we don't get to choose our moments. They choose us. Maya's voice softened. How did the conversation with your dad go? He apologized. On camera, actually. Admitted he was wrong about my career. That's good, right? I guess. But Maya, it shouldn't have taken a viral news story for him to respect me. 3 years of telling him about my work didn't matter. But one dramatic incident and suddenly I'm worth paying attention to. You're right. That's not fair. What are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. I told him maybe we could work towards something better. But I'm not ready to just forgive and forget. You don't have to be. Take your time. Focus on you. After we hung up, I sat in my car for several more minutes before continuing home. When I finally reached my apartment in the late afternoon, I found my phone flooded with notifications. Messages from former colleagues, friends from college I hadn't spoken to in years, even a few journalists requesting interviews. Antonio had called 3 times. I called him back immediately. Emma. Thank God. Are you okay? In the past 12 hours. People want to eat where the woman who saved the councilman works. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. That's a lot. It's incredible for business. But more importantly, how are you? That was your father's wedding, right? Must have been complicated. That's an understatement. Antonio was quiet for a moment. Listen, take tomorrow off. Rest. Process. Come back Tuesday and we'll talk about everything, including that Alina position. They called this morning. Very interested in fast-tracking your interview. Because of the news coverage? Partially. But also because they've been watching your work for months. This just moved up their timeline. After promising to call him Tuesday, I finally allowed myself to collapse on my couch. I ordered takeout, turned off my phone, and watched mindless television until I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke to find my mother's sister, Aunt Claire, had left a voicemail. Emma, honey, I saw the news. Your mother would have been so proud of you. Not just for what you did, but for everything you've built. Call me when you can. The mention of my mother cracked something open inside me. She would have understood. She had always understood. She had valued the work I did, the person I was becoming. I called Aunt Claire back and cried for 20 minutes while she listened patiently. Your father loved your mother, Aunt Claire said gently, but he never understood her values. He's a good man in many ways, but he measures worth in all the wrong currencies. That's his limitation, not yours. He apologized. Said he was wrong. That's a start. But Emma, you don't owe him immediate forgiveness. Healing takes time. Let yourself feel what you feel. Over the next few days, I established boundaries. I responded to professional inquiries but declined most media requests. I agreed to one follow-up interview with a restaurant industry publication, focusing on professional development and safety training rather than the dramatic rescue. My father texted twice. Brief messages checking in, asking how I was. I responded with equally brief replies. I wasn't ready for more yet. On Tuesday, I returned to Marcella's. My coworkers greeted me with applause and teasing. Someone had hung a banner reading our hero in the break room. I laughed despite myself, grateful for their support. Antonio pulled me aside. Alina wants to meet with you Friday. Are you interested? I thought about it. The position represented everything I had been working toward. Better pay, more responsibility, a chance to work with one of the best wine programs in New England. Yes, I said. Schedule the interview. That evening, I finally called my father. We talked for 30 minutes, awkward but genuine. He asked about the Alina opportunity. I explained what it would mean for my career. He listened without interrupting, asked thoughtful questions, and when I finished, simply said, I hope you get it. You deserve it. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a healed relationship, but it was honest communication, and that was more than we'd had in years. Maybe, I thought as we said goodbye, that was enough for now. 9 months after my father's wedding, I stood in the private dining room at Alina, overseeing the final preparations for a wine pairing dinner featuring vintages from Oregon's Willamette Valley. As assistant beverage director, these events had become my specialty, intimate gatherings where guests paid premium prices to experience rare wines paired with Chef Anna Sorton's innovative cuisine. I moved through the room with practiced confidence, checking each place setting, ensuring the proper stemware was positioned correctly, verifying that our servers understood the story behind each wine selection. This was my domain now, and I had earned every inch of it. The position at Alina had exceeded my expectations. The head sommelier, Marcus Chen, was a mentor who actually valued my input. The wine program was sophisticated and dynamic, with a budget that allowed us to source exceptional bottles from boutique producers. My salary had nearly doubled from what I made at Marcella's, and I had benefits that included healthcare and a retirement plan. More importantly, I woke up every morning excited about my work. The viral news coverage from the wedding had opened doors, but I had walked through them on my own merit. In the months following the incident, I completed my Level 2 Sommelier certification, passing the blind tasting component on my first attempt. I had been featured in Boston Magazine's 30 Under 30 in Hospitality profile. 2 weeks ago, I'd been invited to judge a regional wine competition. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, "Good luck with tonight's dinner. I know you'll be brilliant." Our relationship had transformed slowly, cautiously, like frost melting in early spring. After the wedding, my father had made genuine efforts to understand my world. He visited Alina twice, sitting at the bar and watching me work with obvious pride. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He stopped offering unsolicited advice about business school. In October, he attended my Level 2 certification ceremony, sitting in the audience as I received my pin. Afterward, he took me to dinner and asked me to explain what the certification meant, what I had studied, what doors it opened. The conversation lasted 3 hours. We had dinner together now about once a month, sometimes with Victoria, sometimes just the two of us. The relationship wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced, his tendency to dominate conversations, his difficulty understanding why prestige mattered less to me than fulfillment. But he was trying, and I was learning to accept imperfect effort as valuable. Victoria, surprisingly, had become something of an ally. She had developed a genuine interest in wine and frequently made reservations at Alina, bringing friends and praising my expertise to anyone who would listen. It wasn't a close relationship, but it was cordial and occasionally even warm. The most significant change, however, was internal. I had stopped seeking external validation for my choices. The viral attention had been overwhelming and ultimately fleeting. Within weeks, the news cycle had moved on to other stories. What remained was the quiet confidence that came from knowing my own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. Maya remained my closest friend and fiercest supporter. She had recently gotten engaged to a fellow nurse, and I was helping her plan a small wedding for next spring. "No dramatic life-saving incidents at mine, please," she had joked. "Let's keep it boring and beautiful." Professionally, I had begun building a network of colleagues in the wine industry. I attended tastings, joined the New England chapter of the Court of Master Sommeliers, and developed relationships with wine distributors and importers. Marcus had mentioned that within 2 years, I might be ready to pursue my advanced sommelier certification, a credential that would position me for head sommelier roles at the most prestigious restaurants in the country. Councilman Torres had kept his promise about the Culinary Excellence Program. I served on an advisory board with other hospitality professionals, helping to develop initiatives that highlighted Boston's restaurant scene and advocated for better working conditions in the industry. The work felt meaningful, a way to give back to the field that had given me so much. Antonio and the team at Marcella's remained important to me. I visited regularly, sometimes helping with staff training or consulting on their wine program. Antonio had been instrumental in my development, and I tried to pay that forward by mentoring younger hospitality professionals who reached out after hearing my story. My apartment had upgraded too, a 1-bedroom in Cambridge with enough space for a small wine collection and a view of the Charles River. I had started dating a chef from another restaurant, someone who understood the demands of hospitality work and shared my passion for the industry. Nothing serious yet, but promising. The private dining room was ready. Guests began arriving at 6:30, a mix of wine collectors and food enthusiasts who had paid $200 per person for the experience. I greeted them personally, explaining the evening's concept and answering questions about the featured wines. As I poured the first selection, a delicate Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley's Dundee Hills, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. Not just professionally, but personally. I had learned that respect cannot be demanded or begged for. It must be earned through consistent excellence, and sometimes it must be withheld from those who refuse to see your value. My father could have cost me years of self-doubt, convinced me to abandon my path for his vision of success. Instead, his dismissal had inadvertently strengthened my resolve. I had learned to trust my own judgment, to find validation. I had learned to trust my own judgment, to find validation from within rather than seeking it externally. The dinner progressed beautifully. Guests praised each pairing, asked insightful questions, and several requested my card for private consulting events. By the end of the evening, I had received 3 new business inquiries and numerous compliments on the program Marcus and I had created. As I drove home that night, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. "Emma, I hope I'm not calling too late. I just wanted to say I've been thinking about you. About everything that's happened this year. It's not too late. What's on your mind?" I was talking with Victoria tonight about your work, about how well you're doing. And I realized I never properly thanked you. For what? For not giving up on me. For giving me a chance to do better. I know I didn't deserve it. I pulled into my parking space and turned off the engine, sitting in the quiet darkness of the garage. You're my father. Despite everything, I wanted to believe you could change. I am changing. Slowly, maybe, but I am. And Emma, I want you to know, I'm proud of you. Not because of the news coverage or the awards or any of that external stuff. I'm proud because you knew who you were and what you wanted, and you pursued it with integrity even when I made it harder than it should have been. Tears pricked at my eyes. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. You've taught me something important. Success isn't just about money or status. It's about finding work that matters to you and doing it with excellence. You have that. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodnight. As I rode the elevator to my apartment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. My relationship with my father would never be simple or easy, but it was honest now. We were building something real from the ruins of what had been broken. I had learned that sometimes the people who should love us most struggle to see us clearly. But their blindness doesn't diminish our light. It only challenges us to shine brighter, to believe in ourselves when others cannot, to build lives that reflect our own values rather than inherited expectations. The restaurant industry had given me purpose, community, and expertise. It had taught me resilience and confidence. It had shown me that service, real, professional, skilled service, was noble work that deserved respect. And finally, after years of seeking approval from someone who couldn't give it, I had learned the most important lesson of all. The only validation that truly matters is the kind you give yourself. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this wasn't about standing up to my father or proving him wrong. It was about understanding that my value existed independently of his perception. For years, I had carried the weight of his disappointment, allowing it to color how I saw myself and my choices. Even as I built expertise and advanced professionally, part of me wondered if he might be right. Maybe I should have chosen differently. Maybe my path was less legitimate than the corporate careers he valued. The wedding incident forced a reckoning, but not in the way people might assume. Yes, my father finally saw my work as valuable. But more importantly, I finally stopped needing him to. The viral attention was fleeting. The news cycle moved on within weeks. What remained was the quiet certainty that I had chosen correctly, that my work mattered, that respect from the right people, colleagues, mentors, clients who valued expertise, was infinitely more meaningful than approval from someone who had never bothered to understand my field. I learned that family relationships can heal, but only when both parties commit to honesty over comfort. My father and I rebuilt slowly, through awkward conversations and genuine effort, not through dramatic reconciliation speeches. Real change is gradual and imperfect. It requires consistent action over time, not grand gestures in moments of crisis. The hospitality industry taught me something profound about human dignity. Every person who works in service deserves respect, regardless of whether they're pursuing sommelier certifications or simply earning a living. The hierarchies we create around prestigious versus ordinary work reveal more about our prejudices than about actual value. The server who brings your meal, the housekeeper who cleans your hotel room, the bartender who mixes your drink, these are professionals whose labor makes civilized life possible. They deserve dignity, fair wages, and recognition for their expertise. I also learned that sometimes being underestimated is a gift. It forced me to develop unshakable confidence in my own judgment. When external validation is withheld, you learn to generate it internally. You build self-trust that no one can take away. The years my father spent dismissing me inadvertently made me stronger, more resilient, more certain of my worth. What had seemed like an ending, a broken relationship with my father, years of feeling inadequate, was actually a beginning. The beginning of building a life on my own terms, of understanding that success means fulfillment rather than status, of recognizing that the right path is the one that aligns with your values, not someone else's expectations. Family, I learned, is not just about blood relationships. It's about the people who see you clearly, who celebrate your growth, who support your choices even when they don't fully understand them. Maya, Antonio, Marcus, my colleagues at Alina, these people became my chosen family, the ones who valued me consistently rather than conditionally. The wine industry gave me a metaphor I carry always: terroir matters. The specific conditions under which grapes grow, the soil, the climate, the elevation, shape the final product. You cannot force Burgundy terroir to produce Napa Valley wine. Each region must honor its own character to produce something exceptional. The same is true for people. We each have our own terroir, our own combination of gifts and circumstances and passions. Trying to force ourselves into someone else's vision of success is like trying to grow the wrong grape in the wrong soil. It will never produce something authentic or excellent. I am still growing, still learning, still working toward my advanced sommelier certification and whatever comes next. But I do so now with the knowledge that my worth isn't determined by my father's opinion or anyone else's. It's determined by how faithfully I pursue work that matters to me, how much integrity I bring to my choices, how well I honor my own terroir. Have you ever had a family member dismiss your career choice, only to finally see your value when others validated it? What moment made you realize you didn't need their approval to know your worth? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about finding validation within yourself and building a life on your own terms. Remember, the right path is the one that brings you fulfillment and aligns with your values, not the one that impresses others or meets their expectations. Thank you for listening, and may you find work that honors both your skills and your spirit, and the courage to pursue it even when those closest to you cannot see its worth.